It's the Growler with PD and J. Here to analyze for you today. From Growler Bad to Jay's got stats. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Growler Podcast.
All right. Welcome into the latest edition of PD&J on the Growler. Paul Dehner Jr., Jay Morrison, here with you on a Monday, on St. Patrick's Day. The color of the day clearly is green.
Absolutely. And unscheduled. I guess this is an emergency pod. Usually you associate emergency with red, but yes, this is all about the green today.
All about the green today, and that is a day where we are going to talk about the Ja'Marr Chase and T Higgins deals that are done. Of course, it's kind of cropped up over the weekend, really on Friday, with Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport kind of putting out the first of a few different phases of this deal breaking and coming together. But that was sort of the moment where it was apparent that these deals were in place and about to get done. There's a lot to kind of discuss amongst them. It's hard because, Jay, we've talked so much over the course of the last, 2-3 years
Yes.
about these two things and the dynamic of them. So a lot of the philosophy of what's going on there is out there. So we're going to try to break down a little bit right now of the news of what happened, some of the fallout on this particular roster and how it went down. And then Mo's going to join us here at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock. And we are going to get a little bit more into the big picture philosophy of what this is going to look like, when we look back on it in a couple of years and how we feel about it now. To drop in the actual numbers here for you. So T Higgins ends up with a 4-year extension, 4-year deal, I should say, $115 million. It's $28.75 million average annual value. Guaranteed money in the first 2 years. He is signed through 2028. Okay. Ja'Marr Chase, he has the 5th-year option still, then 4 more years. So 4 years of new money after that. And that goes through 2029. So Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase through 2029 together. That's $40.25 million, $112 million guaranteed. Jordan Schultz on those numbers. So you have, that is the most guaranteed money of a non-quarterback. That is the highest average annual value of a non-quarterback. Ja'Marr Chase got what Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor said he would get, and they paid up. They did something that a lot of people thought that they wouldn't. But the one thing, Jay, that I feel like we've said from the beginning has been, it's been clear. All sides pointed up. Everybody wants this. The Bengals side in their staff and in their personnel department, the players got together. They wanted this, and they pointed up and said, "You guys got to find a way to get this done," and they did.
Yeah, and even with T, because we talked about it when we did the Growler bet and we did our predictions on the day that he would sign his extension, and we were optimistic that it would get done early and get done before free agency. And I don't know about you, but as last week dragged on, I started getting less confident that it would get done, because it just made too much sense to get it done before free agency. And then once you get to the negotiating period on Monday and it's not done, and it's like, okay, well, as long as they get it done by Wednesday, and then by Wednesday it wasn't done. And then some doubt started to creep in. But you're right. It always felt like this is something that all sides wanted to get done. It's just a matter of, I don't know where the nudge came from, but it should have happened earlier than it did. But the fact is, it got done. Better late than never. I don't know if you can say that. There's some repercussions to waiting as long as they did, but they got it done. I guess that is the bottom line, and Bengal fans should be happy knowing that you're going to see those 3 guys together. Maybe they'll just keep walking out for the coin toss every game from here on out until the end of their terms.
Well, that's the thing, is you go forward with these 3 guys as your identity. This is your team. Roll the ball out and see if you can outscore this group. Okay. And there are ramifications down the line, and we're going to get into those in terms of what the defense looks like, what the protection looks like, and all of that stuff. But when you can do that and you can say for the rest of this decade, we roll the ball out very capable of being the best passing offense in the NFL, where nothing's more important than efficiently throwing the ball. That's a hell of a foundation to start with. And I don't think there's ever going to be an argument with that, with paying your best players, particularly when they don't have a whole lot of great players to pay anyway. They really needed to be diving back into the draft, develop, retain model that I think they had sort of lost their way on a little bit in recent years. You saw that last week in how they handled free agency and the run it back nature of the defense. And you saw it also here in these deals of being willing to go all the way and extend themselves to now have, more money tied up into a top 3 than anyone in the league. And Trey Hendrickson is going to be the next part of this that we get into. But I don't have a problem with that philosophically, because you can do it. The cap is going up. The numbers on the specifics on this are not really out yet in terms of the distribution, cap percentages, all of that stuff. There's ways around it, and there's ways to structure it. And obviously Burrow has talked about down the line restructuring it where if they need more cap space in a specific year, he can be the one to pull that lever and push more money forward and create cap space if that becomes a problem in the Bengals' eyes. So there's plenty of ways to do that. We will see what those look like. But the cap going up as much as it is, you're talking about percentages. If you add up percentage at signing, average annual value percentage of the cap at signing, the Eagles, when they did their 3, so if you count those when they all signed, Hurts, Smith, and A.J. Brown, it was about 45% was that number. Now, the Eagles are different, and they structure things the exact opposite of the Bengals in all of their contracts. They do less than $2 million deals with void years. And so it's a little different than what the Bengals are doing. That said, these 3 end up a little under 50% in a similar area, right? So it's 2 teams that operate differently. You can do it if you can do it right, and you can take advantage. In the Bengals case, that's going to fall back on their drafts.
Absolutely.
Really needing to hit, because there's just so much pressure on Al Golden and on the draft to really deliver spots that are still kind of hanging out there right now.
So when you talk about that, when you talk about the draft, is because the Bengals have had some really good draft picks and they've had some colossal whiffs. So is the philosophy going forward, do they just need a bunch of doubles, or do they have to get home runs to make this work?
I think they need doubles. They need starters.
I agree.
The problem, so here's the fallout of where they're at and what happened last week, where these deals and them hanging out there and not being all the way done and needing sort of, they really hit the gas late last week, left some meat on the bone for pulling off this optimal efficiency of this entire really challenging offseason. That's where the timing here is good and bad. In that you were able to check your 2 biggest boxes, but it did come at the sacrifice of not checking a few other boxes in like the perfect offseason plan. Yeah. Just some of free agency bypassed them last week. Those of you that watched us talk about nothing for 3 days are well aware, right? That's what went on. And it put a ton of pressure on Al Golden. They did not add the pass rushing pieces and the linebacker and the guard and all the pieces that you thought were going to be part of this that you needed. But the good part of this is, one, you have invested in your best players and your hardest workers, and that will filter down throughout the entire locker room, and you will not have drama. Finally, they can feel like they will not have drama entering camp through OTAs. It has followed them, these slow starts, all the junk that has come along with it. You can run from it and say it hasn't hurt them all you want. Didn't make. Yes, it did. Yes, it does. It matters, especially when they're this big. And so avoiding all of that and getting this done early is good. It just would have been better if it was, a lot earlier, but definitely like a week or 2 earlier, where they could have had a little more, aggressive plan probably in free agency.
Yeah, that's exactly it, because you mentioned it, the quote about, Zach and Duke said, we're going to make Jamar the highest paid non-quarterback. They did. They lived up to that. They backed that up. I think the quote that's going to haunt Duke for a while is, we're not just going to pay more money for the same team. because that is what they've done. And yeah, TJ Slayton's a good addition, but other than that, and when he said that, he didn't mean draft. The draft doesn't. Every team has draft picks. Every team's going to add people in the draft. That's just a given. That's not what he meant. He meant that they were gonna do in free agency what they didn't do and add people. So that just puts even more pressure on getting these draft picks right. And it's not a year where they've got comp picks or added picks from trades or whatever. They have 6 picks, and there's going to be a lot of pressure to get, like, you not hit home runs on all of them, but you can't have any of the whiffs that they've had in years past. This has to be a really solid draft, and maybe they can pull it off. They've had good drafts in the past, but I don't know where the confidence level is, and because of that, I do think that quote from Duke is one that's going to haunt him, stick with him, that the fans are going to bring up for a long time if this doesn't end in a special season.
Yeah, and they, there is change. It's not going to be the same thing. There's a lot of addition by subtraction going on there. Whether you're talking about, obviously you're moving on from Sam Hubbard, you're going young in a bunch of places. Alex Kappa, you're moving on from Alex Kappa. Sheldon Rankins, Jermaine Pratt, it theoretically is going to happen at some point if they ever had a linebacker, and you're going to have some change, and you will have picks, and these younger guys that didn't play as big of roles will get bigger roles. So it will look different, but they are in many ways paying more for the same team. You're 100% right on that. Let's talk about Trey Hendrickson for a moment and where this stands now. So the thing that happened last week and with these deals is you end up in a spot with Trey Hendrickson that, well, they're back to the table, and now all cards are on the table. There's transparency in what his market was, in what teams were willing to pay him, what that should look like for the Bengals now with the framework of these receivers deals done. And it's very much a transparent game for both sides. The other side being the Bengals didn't add any pass rushers, and they are hosed if they don't have Trey Hendrickson next year.
Yep.
So the idea of a trade is not gone, but there has to be a pass rusher coming back in return of some sort, right? You can't go into it and say, okay, Trey's not here, and they're just going to bank on the pick that they get to make up for him, and then Miles Murphy and Joseph Osai and Chris Jan. Like, I don't know what we're even talking about, right? It would be just tanking the 2025 season to not get something back. So if that is somewhere they end up going anymore, it would have to involve a player. That adds another challenge to trying to pull something like that off, which is why both sides are sitting here kind of looking at each other now and saying, let's find a way. And you're seeing the Bengals now moving. They have their priorities. T and Jamar were in a very separate bucket from Trey. And now they got those done, and they see where they all sit, and they're going to sit back down with Trey again and see if this is a place that they can get it to. Knowing the importance of, him not being part of drama as well, but just finding a way to get it done, whatever makes both sides happy right now. And that's hard to say exactly what that will be, other than there's a much clearer view of what the actual details of a deal need to be.
And I mean, so I haven't sat down and looked at the other 31 teams, but if you're going to do that and you're going to get a player back, you're going to want a player that's far outperforming his current contract, or, a young guy on a rookie deal. And that's what you're giving up in Trey, is a guy that's outperforming his current contract. And I think that's going to be hard to find. I don't know, even if you find a guy that is playing really well on a rookie deal, you're going to be back in this same exact spot next year when he comes up for an extension, or maybe in 2 years. Maybe it's a guy that just finished his second year. But I think that's a lot to go through, to throw that wrinkle in too, where you need to get somebody back. And it does feel like, so if they cut Pratt, if they cut Zach Moss, gets them about an extra $9 million right there. I mean, you can bump Trey up just with those cuts alone. And then we haven't seen the exact numbers. I don't know what the cap hits are right now for Jamar and T, but that's going to clear more space too. So yeah, they can bring Trey back, or just sweeten his pot this year, increases his cap hit, or the money due, $16 million, increase that substantially, keep him here, keep him happy for one more year. And then what happens next year happens next year. But I don't know that they are not good at trading as it is, and you throw another wrinkle in there with trying to get a quality player back that's going to give you some semblance of the pass rush that Trey has. That's a lot to ask.
Yeah. So who knows? I mean, you see rumors out there, and you see stuff. Oh, okay, well, is Howie hanging Bryce Huff out there, right? Like, and it's like, okay, well, that you have to look for stuff like that. Okay, well, is there a way where it's like Trey Hendrickson and Bryce Huff comes back with a pick as part of it? That's the type of thing. I'm not saying that's the thing. I'm saying that's the type of thing you have to be trying to find at this point, because free agency of any real answers off the table. They're gone. They're gone. And so you're not going to be able to go back that route. And so it's either go into whatever you got to deal with Trey, or go into free agent, or go and figure out another answer where a team that can, a creative solution that can come up there. Here's the other thing, though. They whiff at guard. Okay. Like, you can have the greatest passing game ever, but are we back again in the, are you going to be able to protect Joe Burrow boat? Okay. You decide to play the receivers, and you have all this money in your quarterback and your receivers, and you're set at tackles. That's a different part right now than it was back in like 2021, right? I mean, you have really strong tackles in Orlando Brown and Amarius Mims, who are both here together for the next 2 years. It's this interior that, you thought you would bring in one free agent, maybe two, right? That could sign. And now it's like, you're not going to get any of them.
Not because you can't, just because there's none left.
There's none left.
Not because you can't financially.
They are not in on Tevin Jenkins. They're not pursuing him. They weren't going to do that. If you look at Ben Johnson's behavior in Chicago, he desperately wanted a great interior line, and the first thing he did was find other people other than Tevin Jenkins to fill them. So I think it speaks in the fact that he's taking a visit to Seattle, kind of speaks to probably how a lot of the league is viewing him there. Must be a lot under the surface there that seems to be happening. Brandon Sheriff, we've talked about, right? I mean, he's trying to figure out what he's going to do. I mean, he's 33. He's played 1 million snaps in his career at a tough position. What does going forward look like for him? He seems to be trying to figure that out. That doesn't feel imminent, because it feels like there's time being taken with whatever's going to happen with that decision. So you're left with having to scour amongst the scrap heap here to find protection, and a draft pick has to come in now and potentially be a starter day one, but is immediately going to be maybe even a clubhouse favorite to be a starter in a competition. And Cody Ford is probably going to end up a starter. I mean, we'll see. I mean, there's going to be, instead of competition at one spot with something you love at the other, now you're looking at competition at both spots probably. And that's kind of scary when you're talking about trying to keep Joe upright to feed the ball to Jamar and T.
Yeah, and had they not whiffed in free agency at guard, they could have moved on from Cordell Volson and saved another $3.4 million against the cap this year. And now you can't afford to do that. You can't afford, as nice as it would be to have that money, you've got to keep him in the mix and just see what happens in camp. As far as Sheriff goes, I need to issue a correction. I know in newspapers, if you mess up, you write the next day, you run the correction. So this is the first pod, I think, after I said it. I did it in real time. I looked at Pro Football Reference's game logs for Sheriff and for the postseason, and there was nothing listed. So I said he's never played in a postseason game. That's not true. I guess they just didn't have it on the game log because there's no stats for offensive linemen, but he has played in 4 playoff games. But the point remains, he's getting up there. He is a prime ring chasing candidate, and a guy that if everything works out where they think he could be a good fit here, might come for less. You come to a team like this, especially now with Jamar and T under contract for the next few years, it's a very attractive spot for a veteran offensive lineman like that has not tasted a lot of postseason success.
Yeah, I mean, the question of can you just protect Joe Burrow is gonna go on. It's going to live on. It's not, every time you feel like they get closer to solving it, it feels like they take 2 steps back. And that's the hard part of this, is you can't go on in his career and have it be like that. And because it takes away the value you have and what you have paid to your top receivers. And Lord knows just the health history here with Burrow. And you see him take so many hits and power through them. it can't always be like that. Just invest in the protection, invest in the lines, and the Bengals are doing the opposite. They're a fascinating test case in that way, in that they're investing on the outside to have these elite receivers, and we know the value of those positions and them winning quickly and what that means. And I think that's the right move. It can be both things. It can be both the right move and also one that has a lot of challenges to it, just by the place that they're in with this. Linebacker is the other big one that they come away with nothing on. There were a bunch of linebackers out there. They weren't able to sign any. They have this hole sitting next to Logan Wilson right now at linebacker that they've got to get figured out. And there's just not a lot of options left that can come in and effectively be, can run your system and what you want under Al Golden. So that feels you now have more pressure on that potentially in the draft or the scouts again kind of scouring to find something in free agency there that could maybe work. It's just that. And then your pass rush, you still haven't added much in the way of pass rush. You're just hoping on these young guys to come along. So now you have probably 2 defensive linemen, right? You have to come away with premium picks, a guard and a linebacker. You have 6 picks. I just named off 4. They need to fill out the running back room. That's 5. Okay. We can you're pigeonholed again, right? That's the thing. You just didn't want to feel pigeonholed in the draft. And so because of that, you feel a little pigeonholed in what you can actually get in the draft. And that becomes something they were trying to avoid. And because it took a little bit too long, they weren't able to be aggressive enough in free agency last week. They're stuck having to figure that part out, even though they do have the stars in place.
I mean, it kind of is, it falls in line with the hope is not a plan philosophy, but I will say, running back and linebacker are probably the 2 biggest success stories in undrafted free agents where, maybe they do go other directions and just say, we're just going to load up on running backs. I think linebacker, you definitely have to draft one, but with Samaje here to back up Chase Brown, maybe they do just load up with running backs in undrafted free agency right after it's over and bring guys in at that spot. But there are still a lot of holes to fill and not a lot of picks to fill them with.
Yeah. And you're also talking about allegedly 2 non-premium positions that you can get away with. And a lot of the smart teams spend a lot of time trying to get away with stuff right. That's where it ends up. It ends up with linebacker and with guard and with running back are positions that, if you follow the money, tend to be devalued. Guard has made its way back up. And running back maybe has made its way back up a little bit, but they don't need a starter at running back. So right. I kind of throw that out. I mean, it's just that they have to try to figure out answers and be creative. You don't have to have big name, expensive linebackers and guards to be good, to be serviceable. That doesn't mean that they're in a great spot right now, that those 2 don't necessarily go together.
So given that point, and we do this every offseason, we create our cap cut casualty candidates. I think I put too many C's in there, but
there's a lot of C's.
Yeah. we do it every year. We put percentages on the guys that we think are likely to be let go. And, Jermaine Pratt even replied to the one that I posted with the clown emoji. I think he may have been a little surprised that he is a candidate for that. Has it changed? What would you say the percentage is right now that because of what didn't happen in free agency that Jermaine Pratt is lining up on the field next to Logan Wilson in week 1 this year?
It's low.
Yeah.
I don't think that they view that as an answer. I mean, it may come to that. I mean, this may make them totally reevaluate and have conversations that are new, that haven't previously been had. But the plan right now is still for it to be somebody else. I mean, they that's not the vision that they have for this defense and who's standing there next to Logan Wilson. The problem is the depth. I mean, the problem is that they don't, what else are you going to do? And so it makes them start to talk again about reevaluating that, but that's not, to this point, I don't think that's been part of the conversation at all. So, but we'll see, we'll see how that goes. I do want to, the 6 picks in the draft, that'll be, important spots. for them to make sure they knock them out. But you can take a lot of positions off of it. We'll be doing a beat writer mock draft on The Athletic this week, and it's the best. It's always my favorite one every year because now we have a good view of what everybody's actually doing, and you can get a more of a real feel for how this is going to end. And so I think when you look at where the Bengals are at right now, those 4 positions I named it's coming out of there. That's the position that your first round pick and your second round pick and your third round pick are coming from. They're all in some combination. That's where it's going to be. So you can throw best player available out the window at this point. That's just not somewhere that they're going to be able to go. All right. On that note, it is 10 o'clock. We made promises here, Jay.
Yes.
That we would be bringing in our good friend Mo Egger to chat with us here at 10 o'clock. And so we're going to be good by that. We're going to do it. So let's bring in Mo here. What's up, buddy?
How we doing, guys?
Doing good. Good morning to you. I see. Is that a green cup?
No, I didn't wear any green today. Sorry.
You didn't wear any green?
No.
It's we think that you're here to celebrate. Is it because you got it all out of the way this past weekend?
Yes. Also, I don't own many things that are green, so my apologies.
Yeah. Well, if you would have gone to Ohio University, you would be more ready. Yeah, that's it. I got to go into the OU stash.
I could have squeezed into my wife's stash of hoodies, but because she went to OU for a while, but those don't fit.
Plenty of time, plenty of downtime to pick up swag. Okay, let's. I want to start this, Mo, with a simple question for you. And actually, it's probably a pretty complex question to answer. But in 3 years, we look back at these deals for Jamar and for T. What do we say?
Depends on how many trophies are in the case.
Yeah.
That's what this is about. But
That's what this is.
I think we could apply that question to everything they do. I think these next 3 years, if the Bengals are going to win a title with Joe Burrow as the quarterback, it's more likely to come in the next 3 years than in the following years after that. And then you get to a point where you don't know if Joe is going to be here. But I think this is only going to be remembered fondly and only going to be viewed as a success if Jamar and T Higgins and Joe Burrow make up the backbone of a team that wins this franchise's first Super Bowl. In the absence of that, this is going to feel empty. In the absence of that, though, I think the entire Joe Burrow era in Cincinnati is going to feel relatively empty. So I think we could say that about whatever they did. Right? The idea behind drafting Joe Burrow and having him and having a guy, I think legitimately for the first time in the history of the franchise, they have a guy who has a real legit claim to the title of best quarterback in the league. That's no knock on anybody who came before him. But I think they have a quarterback who has a clear claim to the title of the person who plays quarterback better than anybody else in the National Football League. You may disagree and think it's Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, etc., but nobody's going to laugh at anybody who would say Joe is the best. Well, if you have one of those guys and you don't win, it's a massive organizational failure. And so no matter what they do, I think in 3 years, if we're still wondering when are they going to win one, are they going to win one, it's going to be very unfulfilling. But given the fact that this is the direction they have gone in, I think now those 3 players who are beloved, who are highly accomplished, who are as identifiable with this franchise as maybe anybody who's played for it, are they merely beloved players who provided a lot of fun moments, or are they guys who brought a trophy to Cincinnati? I mean, I think the conversation in 3 years is solely going to center around that.
Yeah, and it will. So you said if they win a title, where is your confidence level that they will? You can either go 1 to 10, 1 to 100. Where would you set your confidence level that this organization will win a Super Bowl? And when you say trophies, you mean Lombardi, right? Not just another Lamar Hunt AFC trophy. Lombardi trophy. They'll get one in the next 3 years. Where's your confidence level?
6. That
out
sounds,
of 10, right? Not out of 100.
Out of 100, boy, that'd be
6 out of 100.
It's not 1998. 6 out of 10. That sounds low. It's not. It's out of respect for how hard it is, right?
Yeah.
It's out of respect for how good and competitive the AFC is. It's out of respect for how many great quarterbacks there are in the NFL. It's out of respect for how lucky you have to be. So I'll say 6, but honestly, that's higher than it was going into 2021. That's higher maybe than it's been at any point in my life as a Bengals fan. 6, maybe 7. Look, I find it hard to believe that if Joe Burrow plays at a similar level in 2025 to the level that he played at in 2024, they're going to be on the outside looking into the postseason. I mean, we could crush the Bengals for having a bad defense, for all the things that went wrong, getting off to a slow start. What happened last year still feels like a remarkable outlier. If Joe Burrow puts together a similar year, I am going to be stunned if this team is not in the postseason. And if they're in the postseason, they have a chance. And we said this toward the end of the season last year. Put Joe Burrow in the playoffs, and you never know. But also, look, I mean, the recent track record when it comes to the draft is not very good. You guys were just talking about the draft before I popped in. To me, if you're going to set the number higher of that, you're taking a major leap of faith in Duke Tobin to start drafting really, really, really well. You're taking a major leap of faith in Al Golden. You're taking a major leap of faith in what they're doing on defense, which right now, for my money, is uninspiring. You're taking a major leap of faith that at some point they're going to put Joe Burrow behind a really, really good offensive line. There is going to be a massive citywide celebration surrounding the fact that these guys are staying here, but these guys were obligated to play for the Bengals in 2025, and as we talk, their major issues from last year have yet to be rectified. I don't know who the starting guards are going to be. I look at a defense, and I know you both have talked about this and written about this. I look at a defense that is painfully familiar to the one that they had last year. There's still too many uncertain pieces for me to feel uber confident beyond a 6, but they've got Joe Burrow. They've got the backbone of a team in place with Joe, Jamar, and T that has had individual and collective success. We know how good the Bengals were when those 3 players were on the field together last season. We know what Jamar, Joe, and T have accomplished along with their other teammates in the past. We know the caliber of quarterback they have. But they still have a lot of work to do this offseason. They still have a lot of trust to regain as it relates to player acquisition and free agency, player retainment, and acquiring guys in the draft. And so that, to me, is why the number is not higher than a 6. They also have to get lucky. They also have to figure out ways, if you get to the postseason, to maybe beat in successive weeks other quarterbacks who are also MVP candidates. It's really, really hard. But I'm more confident than I've been at least at most points in my life rooting for this franchise.
Even with offensive line questions, and that's like multiple question marks at this point and what's happening at the guard situation and depth. Even with that, I mean, you feel good if you were placing bets today, what's going to be the best offense in football, that the Bengals certainly could be that, right? And if you have that, you're going to have a chance every year. You just need to not be literally what they were last year, historically bad on defense, to be in the playoffs and be dangerous. I want to shift this for a second, though, to what Joe Burrow pulled off and what happened with this front office, because we know nothing irritates them more than being called cheap, and I think that has become. It takes on a life of its own that only shows up when things go bad for the Bengals. When things are going well in 21 and 22 and whatever, no one's talking about that. But the moment, you have a trade request or something that happens to most every team that's good in the league, the cheap thing, I think it's largely unfair in some respects. In other respects, though, there are things that they have just been unwilling to do and not willing to go to. And Joe Burrow, when he stood there in Dallas after that game and hinted that he has a plan and gave a little Joe Burrow smirk, we all were wondering what was the plan. And we just saw him and T and Jamar, and we'll see what happens with Trey, pull off a plan. They're gonna switch and put them together with the same agent. They're going to say they're a package deal. Joe Burrow is going to apply pressure publicly, and then they're going to be able to pull this off. And they're going to say, we're here to work together with you guys and make them the enemy if they don't get it done, and force their hand to do this thing that they were unwilling to do before this. Kudos to you, Joe Burrow, right? You talk about he don't just play on the field.
Nope.
He's more than that. he was able to change the way this team does business and do it in a way that keeps their hardest working, best stars in-house, because you can't just keep letting good players walk out of the building. More of his words that he said.
It's one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen in all the years I've been following this team. The Bengals have often been accused of, you talk about them being accused of being cheap, which I agree is often usually I think a very unfair label. But you often hear people say, well, the Bengals only care about winning negotiations. Well, give them an L here. I mean, call it what it is. At the end of the day, they win because they keep, really, really good players, and they've made their quarterback happy, and fans are excited, and this may work and they may win. But you don't back the Bengals into a corner. Like, how many times have we talked about this? And when I say we, anybody who cares about the team, you do not force the Bengals' hand. You do not put a gun to their head. You do not push them into a corner. Well, that happened here. You do not watch the Bengals allow players and agents dictate the course of their decision-making. And that happened here. 3.5 months ago, this felt like an exceptionally unlikely outcome. I mean, if I would have said at any point in mid-November, as free agency gets underway, they're going to get a long-term deal done with T Higgins and Jamar Chase, you would have said there's no way, Mo, that's not the direction they're going in. And when the Bengals choose a direction, that's where they go. And so watching them pivot has been something to behold. And this is not a criticism. It's not a criticism of the Bengals necessarily. It's certainly not a criticism of Joe Burrow and T Higgins and Jamar Chase. But I can't recall a situation at any point in the recent or even not so recent history of the franchise where this happened, where the Bengals got played. And what does it mean for the future? What does it mean for future contract negotiations, I don't know. But if I'm Joe Burrow, I'm kind of going, okay, 1-0 me. Let's see if down the road there's another lever I can pull that maybe, causes me to get what I want from a team that might not be willing to give this guy a contract or might not be willing to do this. It's remarkable if you understand anything about how this franchise operates. And I think most people watching or listening to this do. You do not pull this off. And yet these three guys did. You do not apply public pressure to the Bengals and expect them to, and call it what it is. They caved here. They caved. Again, it's not a criticism, but they caved. You do not apply public pressure to the Bengals and expect them to cave. You do not expect an agent to be able to pull one over on the Cincinnati Bengals. And those two things happened. And so this might be the less interesting part of it to most fans. And at the end of the day, maybe all anybody cares is do number 1 and number 5 catch passes from Joe Burrow for the foreseeable future. But this pivot and this series of developments happening to this team is frankly not something I thought I would ever see. It's remarkable.
Do you think those three and Joe in particular understand the magnitude of it? They've been here for 5 years of the franchise's 57 years. These guys are used to winning and getting what they want. Is this just another step on the ladder for them, or do you think they understand the significance of what they just pulled off?
I don't think we're dealing with unintelligent people here. I would imagine we're dealing with pretty informed folks. I would imagine that Joe Burrow perhaps specifically understood when he stood there on December the 9th. I think he understood what he was doing, and he understood not only the impact of it, but the precedent it would be setting. I would be surprised if, especially Joe and maybe the others, didn't have some understanding that this is not a franchise that you push around. I'm sure, maybe people in their orbit have maybe warned them against what it's like to go to battle with the Cincinnati Bengals and try to win. But regardless, they pulled it off. I mean, more than the salary cap ramifications or more than what may happen over the next 2 or 3 years, I think that's the story here. The Cincinnati Bengals got worked by Joe Burrow and the agent for Jamar Chase and T Higgins. That's not something you typically say.
And it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
I there's a certain point where you can't You can't keep pushing it. You can't keep fighting. It only makes it worse. And an understanding of right now, this is the best move for the organization. They need to start drafting, developing, and retaining their own players and getting back to that model, right? And this is a huge way to do that, right? And so them going out there and doing it, there are philosophical issues. Like we are all going to watch. The league is going to watch every Bengals game and be like, I want to see if this works, right? This is all we've heard all offseason, and correctly, by the way, I would say, is invest in your lines, invest in the trenches, don't get obsessed. But look, we know the value of receiver. Follow the money. There's a reason that's the top position non-quarterback paid in the league. There's a reason for that. So follow the money, and you can see why people value that. Now, paying one and another and having the quarterback, I don't know. If you do it right, you can win the Super Bowl. Case in point, Philadelphia Eagles. It doesn't mean it's going to work. You have to find a way to offset that somehow, and that's where the pressure shifts back to Duke Tobin and Al Golden, because this is the path they had to take. They really didn't have a choice. You can't send Joe Burrow down the Carson Palmer wormhole. You can't. Like you have no chance then if you do that. And so he wielded his power correctly. The Bengals realized they had to cut bait and give him what he wanted. And now that is still keeps them alive to go out there and have the best offense in football and go win a Super Bowl with these guys. These guys can win a Super Bowl. You can't say that. Every year, what happens? We're like 4 games into the season. They're 1-3, and they don't have any identity, right? No one can say that for the next 4 years. They have an identity, and it's 9-1-5, okay? And that is who they are. That's who they're going to be. And so if they can say that, that is enough to win a Super Bowl. And start there, figure the rest out. Defenses go up and down year to year. You have some picks that hit, a young group that comes together, a good coordinator, and you can have, at very least, an average defense. You hope not a historically bad one, and you can win a Super Bowl with that. They have to be good at some of the other things. They have to win in the margins, something they haven't historically been great at. But when you have that core, like, give you that foundation all day long and make the rest work. That falls on Duke Tobin in the front office to make the rest work, but that doesn't mean the foundation is bad.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Philadelphia Eagles. I kind of feel like that's when some skeptics were won over when Joe Burrow went out and pointed out, like, well, we can do it the way the Eagles do it, right?
Yeah.
Because what does everybody do after every Super Bowl? You take the team that won and you apply it to your local team. Well, see, here's what they did. And so here's what our team needs to do. And then when you did that, when you kind of, all right, let's peel back a layer and see how they did it. Wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Look at how they've built their team. Look at where they've put the money on offense. Look at how good they've been at drafting. Look at what the composition of that dominant defensive front was, which was draft choices and free agents who financially, for the most part, made a lot of sense. And when Joe Burrow said that, I could feel a shift. I could feel a shift among some who were like, okay, you know what? I can't. I have no card to play if I'm anti doing what Joe wants them to do. Because if Joe's going to say, well, look, it was done here to this degree, all right, man, let's go. And I feel like from a public perspective, not that most Bengals fans didn't already want them to re-up with T Higgins and Jamar Chase, but I kind of feel like when that point was made by Joe, there was a sense of, okay, now they have to get this done. To me, that was the most emphatic and most definitive thing he said during all the different media availabilities and podcasts and radio row shows at the Super Bowl that he went on. But yeah, I mean, I don't think at any point during his time in Cincinnati has the arrow been pointed specifically at Duke Tobin. Because what did he do at the Combine? And we talked about this. He said, I want what Joe wants. Right? I want what Joe wants. Okay, well, what Joe wants is going to require you to start figuring it out in April every year. And what Joe wanted was ownership to get this done. So what Duke said, and you know, again, we all talked about this. To me, this was Duke pointing upstairs going, okay, well, I want what Joe wants, so now it's on you. Well, upstairs they went, okay, Duke, got what you want. Joe got what he wants. Duke, now it's on you, man. And so I don't know that at any point, again, we talk about like recent franchise history. I don't know that at any point in recent franchise history or even not so recent franchise history has a front office executive had the spotlight shown on him the way it's going to be shining on Duke, not just in the draft, but over the course of the next couple of days. You'd like to think they're still in the market for a guard. Maybe there's still some free agents who make sense on defense. But I keep coming back to something that we have said often about this team, a standard that this team did not meet last year. Defensively, they've got to be okay, right? It comes back to what we were saying going into the draft last year. It'd be great if they build a top 5 defense. Chances are they're not. Can they be somewhere in the middle of the pack? Can they avoid losing games when Joe Burrow hangs 99 points over 3 straight games on opponents and you don't win any? Can that change, right? But yeah, I mean, the Duke wanted what Joe wants. We knew what Joe wanted, so Duke gets what he wants. Like, it's Joe says, here's what I want, right? And he gets what he wants, and it's like, all right, Joe, now go win it. Duke says, I want what Joe wants. Cool, Duke, you got what you got. You got what you wanted. Now go figure it out here in the offseason. And if he does, then I think we're all going to be really excited about their chances this year. And if he doesn't, then that's what we're going to be looking back on a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now.
Let's run it back. First question I had for you. Where's your confidence level that Duke gets this draft right?
Not very high.
It's not 6. Maybe it is 6 out of 100.
3.
Yeah. Here's the thing. The old Lebowski line, this is our
Mm-hmm.
concern, dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is, you already kind of botched the first part of it in free agency, right?
Yeah.
Like so the idea of it's on you, you
Mhm.
got to get it right in the margins now, right? Because the big, the core is full. You got to win on the edges. And already free agency was not great. And so when you're talking about that, now you got to do that in the draft where it hasn't been great. You've got to win in wave 4, or whatever the hell wave we're even on in free agency now, in finding some gems. You have to. And so if they can do that, if they can find serviceability and maybe a breakout star somewhere in free agency and the draft at multiple positions, it all works out. But that's what's on their plate right now. And that's the concern, is that it's asking a lot of a lot of people to do it. But it was the path that they had to take. That's sort of the double-edged sword of it. It's the path they had to take was to count on their personnel people to go win in the margins. And we'll see if they can do it.
We've often said the Bengals have been where they've been the last couple of years because they haven't drafted well. That's not changed. The past hasn't changed. That criticism, that assessment hasn't changed. And so, it looms over the next 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, it does. And, I'm certainly hopeful that last year's draft class could collectively take a major step forward. And I think there's reason to be optimistic that'll be the case. But specifically in the first round, obviously there were heated discussions about whether it should be Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell. The ones they got right, though, for the most part, were the decisions that were made for them. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. The decisions where they had to put some work in. Dax Hill, not entirely the front office's fault or Dax's fault, hasn't worked out. And same for Miles Murphy. And so if the player they take with the 17th overall pick this year has almost no impact, that's going to be a really big deal for this team this year. Maybe bigger than last year, year before that. So
yeah, because that person, it's similar to Mims last year. I mean, he had to come in and you had to have an impact. They hit that, right? They got that. They have to get that again, and they probably need another one. They certainly needs to look better after that. The thing that I've pointed out, and I'll wrap it on this, but is that so many of these draft picks that have missed have had one thing in common: they're on defense. I think they have drafted well offensively for the most part, Jermaine Burton aside, which was kind of a risk all on its own. I think they have had, most of their high draft capital has gone on the defensive side of the ball. They've found some gems on day 3, Chase Brown, Andre Yosevich, for where they were picked, and been able to find something. They've hit at the top: Chase, Higgins, Burrow, they whatever. You can go through and parse through the middle there, but I think for the most part, it's just everything fell apart on defense. which directs all eyes back to Al Golden, who's supposed to be the guy to fix that part. And if they can do that, then it all makes sense. Then it all plays together correctly. It's just, again, a very large, almost reckless bet on a coordinator being able to fix all of those problems, both past draft and this draft.
How many times over the last 4 or 5 years would you say that in the draft the Bengals have reached?
Most of their second, and third round picks. Definitely multiple, at least a couple in premium picks.
So what I wonder is, because now you have to draft defense. You guys were talking about this right before I came on, right? It's not so much about best player available anymore. It's about, oh boy, we need defense. Does that compel them to reach when they don't have a good track record when it comes to their recent reaches? And again, the 2024 class, jury is out. Let's talk in a year. I'm open-minded about all those guys, and I think for good reason. For the most part, what I wonder is, for a franchise that recently, when they have reached, are they going to have to reach this year? I feel like the answer is going to be yes. Like you're not taking luxury picks in the first round. You're not taking a guy who plays position A just because he is the best player on your board. Now, it feels like they're going to do it the way, frankly, a lot of fans do it, which is they need a guard. They need a guard. They need a guard right now. Well, we don't have a guard who's got, let's say, for instance, a second round grade. Yeah, but we need a guard, and so we're going to take one. Like I do worry about that. They've put themselves in a position where maybe they have to make picks out of desperation. That's never a good place to be. And when you're the franchise with a recent track record of reaching and it not working, that's also not a very good place to be.
But I will say, having paid Jamar Chase and T Higgins and Joe Burrow is a great place to be if you're a Bengals fan, right?
Sure. Yes.
Show up every Sunday and you get to watch that. I used to say one of the great joys in my career was getting to say that I saw every snap of AJ Green. It was every week I showed up and I knew I'd see something amazing. And I feel that have to feel the same way about each of those three.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be exciting. It's going to be entertaining. Will it win any hardware? Well, that's part of the fun of sports too. We'll find out, right? If they can. I just think you do have to appreciate an organization that said, all right, we're doing it. And went all in there and said, we're going to be definitive in taking this shot and believing in our guys that we know work here, that want to be here, that are our hardest workers and our best players. Reward them and let everybody see that as an example. That is a great foundation to set.
They chose to not go to war.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
The Bengals are going to war with you now.
Ceasefire.
They
can all learn from this.
chose to not go to war with Joe Burrow. And let's be honest, there's all of us at some point have thought, like, what is that going to look like? They chose so two things. Number one, they chose to not go to war. I give them a lot of credit for that, because often I've thought the Bengals are really good at preparing for a battle that they don't need to be in, better than they are getting ready to battle teams on the football field. Number two, like, I'm stoked for T Higgins, man. Like, there are, we talked about this after the Denver game. And obviously Jamar Chase is a beloved player and Joe Burrow is a beloved player. I think T Higgins over the last year has become one of the most beloved members of the Bengals that I can recall. And obviously he did request a trade last year, but I go back to that Kansas City game on New Year's Eve in 2023 when they're fighting for a chance to be in the postseason. And the dude is like dragging himself onto the field. His coaches didn't even know he was going out there. I thought he handled everything last offseason professionally. When we were expecting him to, he's not going to sign the franchise tag. He signed it in June. Well, he's going to show up and be pissed off. He shot down questions about, kind of being screwed. And, hey, look, I'm going to make $21 million. Like, I'm good here. He played in the preseason. He played, and obviously he missed time. And we're all going to be waiting to see if T. Higgins can play in 16, 17 games. But I really like seeing guys like that get rewarded. And I also feel like there's something to be said about, like, people like that. You want to be a part of your team, right? You want to be a part of whatever is next, whatever this next iteration of the Bengals looks like, and however it plays out. I want T. Higgins part of that. And if they do win a title, they could win one without T, and it would be awesome. But you would also go like, man, it'd be kind of cool if that guy was here for that. And now if they win one, he's going to be here for that. And I know that's not why you make the decision. I know that sounds kind of hokey, but like over the last year and a half, as a fan, I have found myself really drawn to him. And that's nothing against Jamar Chase, who's a ridiculously good player. It's so fun to think about, by the end of his time in Cincinnati, what are those numbers going to look like? Like, I mean, in relation to some of the great wide receivers they've had, like what are we talking about? A guy who could put together a Canton resume playing all of his prime years in Cincinnati with this quarterback on top of what team success they may achieve. The last year and a half, like I have found myself really rooting for T Higgins, the guy. And so I'm stoked for him. I'm stoked that we get a chance to enjoy, at least for the foreseeable future, the career of somebody who I think is just a beloved athlete in this town. Mm-hmm. And then you add to it, what if he is a part of a team that wins? What if these guys do get it done? Baseball fans from back in the 70s are always, still to this day telling us about the Great Eight. What if those three guys end up being the dudes who lead the charge to winning a championship in Cincinnati? How do we talk about those guys forever? I think it's really fun to think about. And so I think it's easy to wonder, like, God, what if it doesn't work? We all do that. But if it does, like that is a pantheon that in this town from a football perspective is totally uncharted. And God knows from my perspective, I hope in a year or in 2 years or 3 years, we are talking about what those three guys have helped deliver to this city. I think it's a lot of fun to think about.
You need a new circle on the Ring of Honor if that happens. The three would have their own. Rings would certainly be what you'd be talking about. But yeah, that would be an unbelievable legacy to set, and they're going to have the chance to do it. They're going to have them. They'll never have a better chance than these three guys in their absolute prime for 4 seasons, where you just need it all to come together one time, and it's going to be something that's never happened in franchise history, and that would send this city to a place that's never been seen before. We shall see. And we'll see what a place that you get sent that you've never felt before when you start taking calls at 3:00 today. I'm really curious to see what that's going to sound like on ESPN 1530. Make sure people are tuning into that. And Mo and I will be back together from 3 to 4 tomorrow, assuming they don't throw a Jamar Chase and T Higgins press conference right at 3:00 into Mo's time slot. But we'll work around it regardless, and we can chat more about this and the fallout then. Mo, appreciate your time as always, and we will talk to you later.
I am looking forward to talking about squeezing in some Jamar Chase and T Higgins talk in between our comprehensive preview of Cincinnati versus DePaul in the college basketball crown.
So, can't wait.
Yeah, we've got that to break down over the course of most of the 3 hours, and we'll jam in some Bengals talk.
I'll do some crown research for you. Appreciate it. All right, see you, Mo.
Hey, guys.
All right, Mo Egger. All right. A lot of ground has been covered, Jay. We've gone to a lot of different places. Any final thoughts off of that conversation before we shift forward a little bit?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting what he said. I agree with him about T, where a lot of times fans just play on the field and they don't care. We don't care if he's a nice guy, if he talks to the media, but I think that has changed with T. I think it's hard not to see in negotiations and contracts. They're messy and they're contentious. And I don't want to act like he's the first one that's been treated not unfairly, poorly by the team. And he handled the entire thing with class and did everything, from signing the tag early last year, and everything he said, everything he's done it the right way. And I do think he's endeared himself to the fan base. And as much as Mo talked about the Bengals, they won, they beat the organization. T still could have got more money elsewhere had he not done this deal and gone out on the open market next year. And so it's not like he took a hometown discount, but I do think the fact that he could have got more money elsewhere and he chose to stay with Joe and with Jamar, I think that's going to further endear himself to the fan base. And I do think he is going to be, as much as they love Joe and they love Jamar, and you hear it every game when they announce the starters and the roars those guys get, I think T is going to rival that. I think it's going to be, like you said, that they are the foundation. And I think those cheers are going to be just as loud for T as they are for Jamar and Joe when those guys run out and they have the offensive starters announced before a game.
And you know what Cincinnatians love more than anything? Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Like they love people that love the town as much as they do.
Yeah.
It's such a provincial place. It's not Ohio, it's not Kentucky, it's Cincinnati, and that includes Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana. Like there's such a love for people that appreciate the place as much as they do. And T Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow wanted to do this here, despite the challenges that the organization feels. And when you have every national person you could find from the months before Joe Burrow was drafted till this time right now, talking about how the Bengals can't do it and that it's a place where you're going to go to die and you'll never get paid and they don't do it right. The fact that they all got paid here, they've all played well. They've been in a Super Bowl. They've been in back-to-back AFC championship games. They've had essentially the top passing offense in football. They've done all of these things, and this is where they wanted to do it. You know, they didn't want to blow it up. They didn't want to go elsewhere. They wanted to do it here. They had to work hard to make the organization want it as much as they did, but they wanted to do it here. And I think that means something. I remember saying this when I was on Robert Mays' show at the Combine. It's that it's not an angry place that Burrow is taking on the organization. I think people want it to be him versus them, and it is in respects. This is where he wants to win. And he understands the problems are like, if we don't sign these guys, if we don't change a little bit of the way we do business, I can't get my dream of winning here. Because this is where I want to do it. I love this place. I love the coach. I love Ohio. I love being in Cincinnati. I love small market. I love the things that you're able to do. Like, I love my teammates. So I'm going to go fight for all of that because I think if we can do it here, it could be more special than anywhere else. And he's right.
Yep.
It's like when the Cavs won a championship and LeBron won the championship for Cleveland. It's never going to be more special than if you can do it somewhere that's never been done before. That's a legacy unlike anything else. And I think when you do that, it means something. And that's kind of I think the background of all of that. The fact that they want to do it here is such sort of the undertone of why it makes sense, and not seeing people that wanted to do it here get run off. So we had a growler bet. We haven't gone through the answers yet, but we had a growler bet on when T Higgins would sign. Jay and I had predicted, you mentioned it earlier. We had predicted, I think I had the 10th, you had the 12th. It ends up being the 16th, I guess, technically, with the official report, although it seemed like the deal was pretty much done on Friday. And then again on Saturday, and then again on Sunday. It's been done multiple times, essentially. But either way, so it's the 16th as kind of the official, okay. It was what we're going to go with. We got to go through the answers and see if anybody had the 16th. There was going to be a Graeters shipper associated with the winner there for being Graeters worthy, because what's better than winning something if you can get Graeters, 6 pints of Graeters to show up on dry ice at your doorstep? It's beautiful. But we're not done yet, Jay.
Oh, you could win twice. What's better than winning once is winning twice.
Let's keep giving them away. You know, I mean, look, we love Graeters. We love bringing happiness to people. So let's do it again. Jay, we're going bracket.
Yeah.
We're going to go bracket.
Yeah. So the Growler Podcast, if you go to ESPN's bracket contest, free to play, we've created a group, the Growler Podcast. The password is Growler Pod. And you just go in there, fill out a bracket, limited to 3. We're not going to go bracket of integrity where you can only pick one. You can only fill out one bracket. You can do 3, but whoever ends up with the highest score in the bracket contest, just among Growl Pals. It's not a public group. You have to have the password. You have to listen to the show, watch the show to play. That whoever wins that will win a Graeters shipper.
Graeters shipper coming your way. You've got that coming for you. Free group, compete against us.
Yeah.
And I really don't like having to put my bracket out there. I'm gonna have my daughters compete as well.
Yeah, you should.
And because they smoked me last year. I'm not gonna lie. Not gonna lie. I took too many chances and it backfired on me. And so we'll all be in there. Myself, Jay, Mo, Mark, Charlie, the whole crew. We'll all be in there. So you can compete with us, and the winner, the top Growl Pal, I should say. If I win, which won't happen, but if I win. I'm not going to have it shipped to my house. Top Growl Pal will be the winner, but you can try to compete. Unless you're like, no, I want the Graeters. I mean, we can
I
do
do,
it.
but I'll go buy my own. I want a Growl Pal to win the free one.
That's great. That's coming your way. So the Growler Podcast group on ESPN's Bracket Challenge, and Growler Pod is the password there. So get entered in before things get started. All right. Wrap up. Any Arby's from you, Jay? You got any Arby's to fire my way?
Well, I was going to use my mea culpa on the Scherf thing as my Arby's. I'll go with just how unusual it was to just what a weird feeling to I had a fantasy baseball draft in Columbus yesterday, came home, watched the White Lotus, went to bed. I didn't think, even though all the signs were there, they were getting close. I just figured on a Sunday night, okay, they're going to wrap this thing up on Monday. And then to wake up this morning and see that the deal is done, that I was sleeping, what had happened. It was a little uncomfortable feeling, but we immediately fired up the pod and be firing up an article here pretty soon on my thoughts on the deal. And it's just the way things work sometimes. It is not a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah. I think it's interesting when you see how this is the ultimate. It's such a big thing, right? And every insider wants to have their piece of it. It's so interesting to see like how it gets kind of divvied out. It's like, okay, you can have the significant progress and that they're both going to get done together. Okay. And then you can have the terms and the moment but the Sunday night thing is, I guess it's like, look, let everybody wake up Monday morning and own the cycle, which is fine. But the timing of it all and the way it all went down was fascinating to watch. The sort of the divvying of information get spilled out and rolled out, and of course now you'll have the Bengals. But kudos, I thought Bengals social was good. They had some good ones. They pulled out some old ones. They had the Duke Tobin go get your own receiver.
Yeah.
They had the opening orange clip of T, Jamar, and Joe opening the I guess the bag or whatever it was, and having the glow on their face. That was a good one. I thought they were doing a pretty good job of being ready over there. Many of the three of them dancing. I think I saw that one circulating quite a bit. So they were ready.
Yeah.
They were ready to confirm as we wait for the signing photos and the dual press conference. They're going to hope this one goes better than the last dual press conference after signing they had. The last one was Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap for their third contracts. The good news being that this is the second contracts of T and Jamar, and that's a reason why you feel a little bit better about the money that you're spending.
Can they do a dual press conference? I mean, do they have enough money left after paying these guys to buy another lectern? Because the old news conference room is under construction. We're in an auxiliary room now with one lectern that the guy stands behind. It's not a big dais with 5 chairs. So yeah, they're gonna have to share the mic or buy another lectern.
Let's hope that there's a second mic around the building somewhere. Yeah, I don't know if people knew that. So the part of another phase of the renovation of the locker room that happened last year is the press conference room, which is attached to it, is being reconfigured and redone. They're adding like a Zoom room and all kinds of stuff, and also like a door that connects to the locker room to bring players in and out, so they don't have to walk out around with the way that they reformatted everything. And so all the stuff now and in the draft and going forward is in this auxiliary room, and then we'll be back in there theoretically when the season's camp starts or whatever. They'll be back in for the actual press conferences in there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that. But the room itself is changing. It's like losing a home, Jay. It's so weird. A full renovation. Now, the first question I heard on that though is, does this mean they'll finally have mics that can pick up your guys' questions?
Yes.
I make no guarantees on that. I don't know. I think there's probably a hope that there's maybe some mics in the floor or somewhere or hanging from the ceiling that can pick up the questions now. But I don't know anything about that right now. We'll all learn together on that one. But, all right, Jay, great stuff. Thanks for hopping in. Keep it locked to, of course, Sports Illustrated and The Athletic, where we've got stories up, and you can go read all about these deals and keep it locked here. We'll be back again Wednesday with more from whenever we talk to Jamar and T and reaction to everything that was said there. And, free agency, they're going to be dipping through the waves again. And so a couple more moves. Be looking for linebacker and guard are probably going to be top targets right now as they try to find some answers, some semblance of answers at those positions. And the Trey Hendrickson thing still hangs out there. So emergency podcasts are always on deck.
Yeah.
It's still emergency podcast season always. And we hope you guys have been liking the live shows. We know that we were doing them at night, but this felt like it was time for a St. Patrick's Day morning. Look, you guys are up. You're up at the bars anyway. So you might as well just get started early with a live show early. It kind of probably for some of you feels like 9 o'clock at night because you've already had a car bomb, you crazy people. So anyway, hope everybody is having a great day. And we will talk to you soon. Have a good one.